Welcome to the Sleeping Barber Podcast.
Bonjour mes amis et bienvenue à the Sleeping Barber Podcast.
Bonjour, bonjour, comment ça va?
That's it. That's all.
Is all we're doing?
That's the French content for the year.
We got to do that auto dubbing and get it in a different language.
That would be really good. I think, it's exciting, V, that we're learning how to speak French today together on our 100th episode.
100. We hit 100.
We did. Congrats.
100 episodes, and we've just begun. The Sleeping Barber Podcast is where the best run. Thanks for keeping us in your ears. We're glad you're here. Now it's time to shift gears, unlocking a future with bold new ideas.
You're like Dr. Seuss.
Right? I may or may not have had some help from my friend VGBT.
That was really good.
Right?
Amazing.
We should have dropped a beat, though.
Oh, yeah. Okay, you ready?
No, I'm not doing it again.
Oh,
it's okay.
Come on.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, very exciting. And thank you for listening. It's very exciting for us to have you. And I don't know how many episodes you've listened to, but it's really great to have these listeners that we've acquired and like had a lot of really great conversations with people over the last few years and 100 episodes. And we're very excited about not only like the things we've done, and we're going to talk about our Sleeping Barber in the podcast, like is a marketing moment or case study later.
Moment.
But yeah, we're very excited about like especially what's coming up for next year. So the best I think is yet to come still.
100%. 100%. It's in case you haven't noticed, we're really celebrating today. We have our party hats on. Well, not really. Maybe there's virtual party hats we can throw on here. I don't know.
Yeah, that would be good. Let's put maybe clapping. And
there we go. There it is.
Congrats, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you. Thanks.
Oh, there's more still, V. Oh,
there it is. Oh, please stop, everybody. Stop.
Oh, it's so good. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, no. Thank you. You're too kind. You're too kind.
Yeah.
Okay.
Honestly, like to everyone that's tuned in, shared an episode, or even dropped us a note on the side from our encouragement or things that we can be doing differently and better. Thank you. And of course, to all our guests who've brought their insights and a lot of their energy to many of our episodes. You've all been a huge part of this journey that we're really, really excited to continue to build upon. So here's to our next 100.
Yeah. It sounds like a giant number, but when you think about it, I guess it's 2 years if we do almost
3
one a week.
Yeah, fair enough. But we didn't start one a week.
Yeah, we did. We originally started alternating like one every other week, and then we started. Yeah. So we can ramp that production up. Yeah, and we've got also we can talk more about the different formats and all that kind of stuff. But yeah.
Awesome.
Well, in the spirit of celebration, V, let's celebrate with some news stories.
I mean, that's why we're here.
Yeah, that's exactly why we're here. With what's trending in the news.
Yeah, and I think you're up first. We just came off a really hot Black Friday.
Yes. So, Black Friday just happened. Cyber Monday was yesterday. I think from the source that I found, which is Reuters, there's all kinds of different reports out there. So I was trying to find something that was relatively credible. U.S. Black Friday spending in-store and online rose by 3.4%. On the surface, sounds like a really good story. There's a MasterCard had put out estimates around a 0.7% in-store sales growth, but a 14.6% online sales growth.
Oh.
Yeah, so online is a big winner here. Bargain hunting shoppers shifting online for deals. Within the story, they had talked about even some guy who was standing in line to pick up something that he purchased online and bought in store. He was looking for more deals online and was going to have them all shipped to his house. So there's this giant demand for online. And I think why it has grown so much and has become such a powerful tool is because it's where buyers have so much control. There's tons of information accessible to everybody online, and it's just kind of made it easier to find rather than going store to store to store.
Yeah.
The potentially, I don't want to say troubling part, but like asterisk in this story is that when accounting for inflation, in-store sales is even weaker. Some estimates put it as an 8% in-store decline. So and then in some cases where, because of discounting, all that kind of stuff, sales might be slightly up, but with inflation, there's actually deflation happening, which is kind of a funny thing to hear.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And then there's also this other compounding challenge with the number of days between Black Friday and Christmas. So retailers are feeling a lot of pressure to be able to deliver in a short period of time. Within this report, they also had a summary from what Adobe was reporting as the biggest top sellers. Makeup, weirdly, not weirdly, but my two girls and all of their friends are all about makeup. So I kind of feel like there's a really strong buying demo in the 10 to 16 age is making up all of that, because it seems like they have all of Sephora in their bathroom. Bluetooth speakers and espresso machines were the top sellers, according to Adobe.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I guess that's what it is. It's Bluetooth speakers. Obviously, I could see why espresso machines. I thought those things would have flatlined, but it looks like there's still more growth left in that, right? So that's really interesting. Okay.
What do you got?
Well, we're going to shift gears.
Oh, I see what you did there.
Did you see what I did there?
Yeah, that's really good. Like it.
Jaguar releases a concept for its new EV model after a controversy over its rebranding, which didn't originally feature a car. So I found this in the Business Insider. I would argue this story has been hitting everyone's feeds for the last couple weeks?
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. I think it's as big of a story as Black Friday.
This is huge. It's huge. We actually are going to speak to it twice today. That's how big this one is.
Yeah.
But I'm going to kick things off a little bit here. So Jaguar just recently unveiled its Type 00 electric concept car, signaling this bold shift toward that all-electric future that they talked about as part of this rebrand. And despite the criticism of its rebranding campaign. So like they're still moving forward. They're pressing forward, so to speak. They're launching these two vehicles. So the concept car that's been revealed. So Jaguar debuted the Type 00 concept car at Miami Art Week, which again is not a usual place where you would be launching a vehicle in. So it just kind of shows like they're really leaning into this new identity of theirs. The car reflects Jaguar's new design philosophy, exuberant modernism, focusing on bold and artistic creativity. Features include butterfly doors, panoramic roof, the brass-etched leaper, which is the new Jag logo. Interior lights include brass accents, floating travertine stone supported seats, and deployed screens, and vibrant color reveals, etc. Now, the two colors that they are launching with is Miami pink and London blue, which symbolizes Art Deco Miami and Jaguar's British heritage. So it's kind of a nod there. We've talked about, and many people already know, that they are really just planning on transitioning to fully electric vehicles, with its first electric model set to be unveiled late 2025 and available in 2026. So sometime next year, probably Q3, Q4, we'll probably see that. Expected specs include 430-mile range, rapid charging capabilities, adding 200 miles in 15 minutes, which is something that I think for many of these EVs right now, that's where they struggle. The charging part, it's not it takes a lot more time than just what it would typical if you're running a gas operated vehicle. So there's a lot of rebranding controversy around the rebrand. We talked about it and we highlighted that. No, sorry, we actually haven't talked about it yet, but I'm sure everyone's feeds have been, let's just say, bombarded. But
Totally.
So Jaguar's rebranding campaign featured a redesigned logo, vibrant visuals without showcasing any vehicles, drawing criticism for being woke, quote unquote woke. Critics highlighted the campaign's lack of traditional automotive focus, which supporters praise it as a creative disruption. Everyone's divided on this, to be honest with you. And I don't know if there's a right answer here. Only time will really tell. The campaign itself aims to reposition Jaguar as a premium luxury brand targeting higher-end audience, inspired by Range Rover. They all used to be, I think they're all part of the same company.
Yeah,
JLR, right?
Jaguar Land Rover, yeah.
Exactly. The rebranding signals a more move to ultra-luxury markets, with upcoming models priced significantly higher than Jaguar's current range. And yeah, like Jaguar's leadership defends the campaign, attributing a backlash to intolerance. So that's a really interesting take right now. But I know we could probably spend a whole episode talking about Jaguar, but just quickly, what are your thoughts?
I mean, like everybody else, I was getting stories about it before I'd even seen the ad. There was a picture I saw or post from somebody saying Jaguar drove off a cliff. And that was the first one I'd seen about. I'm like, what are you talking about? They drove off a cliff. And then, like, after about 5 other stories, then I finally saw the ad that they were talking about. And it's the colorful ad, super colorful ad with a whole bunch of like kind of androgynous looking people. Yeah. So that was the ad. That's the stuff that people were really revolting against. So I don't know, man. Like, for any company, really, I genuinely wish them well, and hope this all works out. Like, this could be a solo stove thing, like right where everyone shits on them for the first little bit, and then all of a sudden they start
praise them.
They actually analyze the sales after they get the sales data, and then lo and behold, it's a huge success. Who knows? Yeah, who knows? I think what people are upset about from the marketing community. Actually, when I first saw that thing, I was like, Jaguar drives off a cliff. I kind of thought, and nobody else even outside of marketers has a clue what we're talking about. Like I didn't at the time.
Me neither.
So, I mean, I think there's like a lot of stuff in this ad and in this campaign that is interesting to learn from. And I think we should learn from it because it's like a case study unfolding in real time.
Yeah, I agree.
Which kind of brings me to my article about Jaguar.
Go.
Roger Martin, just I think it was yesterday, posted about this. So the article title is "Advertising Malpractice at Jaguar," and so I think it's a very thoughtful critique, and he challenged the challenge with his rebrand, or for them. He starts by acknowledging that Jaguar has sold 64,000 cars worldwide in 2023. In comparison, Porsche sold 75,000 cars in the U.S. alone. So the brand is relatively small. It's got to do something. There's an acknowledgement there that they need to do something. They need to be extreme, and so you can kind of see where this campaign comes from when you think about the sales.
Yeah.
But then Roger talks about 3 reasons for the title of his article, which we've actually talked to him about a few of these things in the past. So the first reason why he says this is a problem, he compares the Jaguar rebrand to things like Tropicana and Bud Light. And so we've seen those ones play out when they rebrand, and there's a lot of danger there. So I think that's the extrapolation that a lot of people, including Roger, are making. But Roger does a really good job at speaking to the specific points about it. So first reason for the title is there's a destruction of brand habits. So they deleted all historical brand assets by the looks of it. So the leaping
all
cat,
gone.
Totally gone in the name. The brand word mark is now a new font, new logo. And then when we had talked to Roger a long time ago about this idea, his example, I think it was the ESPN website where they changed everything. And he was a big fan of the ESPN website, visit all the time. He's a huge football fan. And he's like, all of a sudden they changed everything and it forced me to rethink my habit. So then I did, and I switched over to CBS Sports. And so I think his take here is that, like, as an example, getting rid of the 42-year-old leaping Jaguar image or icon from their logo unnecessarily forces existing customers to think about their next purchase choice. rather than just making it habit, now they've got interruption from their habit, and now you're forcing people to look at other options. So that's the first one. Second one is creating fissures within brand segments. So while looking for new customers, which we all agree they have to do, I think, I forget the guy's name off the top of my head, but like it's the guy who's leading the design on this, said that they expect about 10 to 15% of their existing customers to follow this new brand, which means that they're okay with losing 85 to 90% of their existing customer base. And so creating fissures between segments means, like, rather than creating a sub-brand to attract this new group, they're just taking the existing brand and cleaving off an entire part of it, then the smaller part of it, and betting the future on the smaller part of it.
Totally.
And so, like, again, it's kind of like one of those things, like, do you have to be that extreme to create that fissure in the segments?
Yep.
And then the other part is an absence of a promise to the customer. So promise to the customer being memorable to the customer, the components of it, that it's memorable to the customer, valuable to the customer, and that the promise is deliverable by the company doing the advertising, and then auditable by the customer who's having the promise made to them. So since it misses all of those things, there's, like, in his mind, like, in part of the reason around malpractice.
Yeah.
So I think all those things are really interesting, very thoughtful comments about it. As I said, like, I don't know where this is going to go with Jaguar. You hope that they do a great job with it, and they hope that they win. It's been a long brand. It has, like, kind of a fabled history.
100%.
And they've done really well with Land Rover, and those and the Defender and all that kind of stuff. So maybe, but it echoes with so many of those other campaigns, like Tropicana, like Bud Light, where you're kind of like, I feel like I've seen this movie before.
Yeah. I agree with that, Mark, if I'm honest. There's a lot of this, like, I understand rebrand. Like, heck, marketers don't need an excuse to pull the trigger on a rebrand. And obviously the slumping sales, having sold only 64,000 cars worldwide in 2023, something has to change, right? But usually, in these instances, it's going to be product oriented. So when they launched a new brand without a car up front, so it was hard for for anyone. And I'll be honest, if we go and walk to people on the street, they may or may not have heard of this whole thing with Jaguar. Let's be honest. The only reason we're talking about it is because it's hit the marketing community more than anything. So when, in absence of the product, and now trying to reestablish a new image, if you will, it doesn't go hand in hand, especially in this industry, right? Mm-hmm. You can usher in a new era just by a new model, a new concept vehicle. And what we've seen are just renderings. Mm-hmm. Like, we don't even have, like, an actual picture of this yet. Mm-hmm. And the fact that they're saying that they're going to launch this, it'll be revealed late 2025 and then made available in 2026, means, like, technically they probably should have some pictures already that they could have put in front of the consumer to be like, yeah, this is what it's actually going to look like. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I feel this one is like you said, it's a movie that we've seen before. It'll be interesting how that 10 to 15% of consumers will continue to follow. Maybe as what was it? Not JBL. What's the
JLR?
JLR. Maybe they're okay taking this big risk, but how long will it take till they put in a new CEO, a new CMO, and, like, let's go back to what we know what works and just get better at delivering on our heritage versus this new direction.
Yeah, and that's the Solo Stove part where you're like, Solo Stove had that campaign right around this time last year with Snoop saying, give me a moment, I'm quitting smoke.
Yeah.
And then the big reveal was he was a promo they did with Solo Stoves. And so immediately thereafter, sales didn't pick up. So they fired, I think, the CEO and maybe the CMO.
I think the CMO got axed for sure.
Yeah, it might have been the CMO.
Yeah.
And then hired a new one, and then later on, 6 months later, they found out actually no, sales did work. We just didn't have immediate impact in sales. So, yeah,
we shall see.
Yeah,
we shall see.
That's why they play the game, beat.
That's why.
Yeah,
that is why.
Anyway, I'm sure there'll be lots more coming out about this in the very near future. But
agreed.
What else you got?
So the last article that we have, and the one that I found was, we know the DOJ trial kind of wrapped up, and we haven't really done a real summary of it, but there's one really interesting tidbit that came out of it, where the DOJ essentially is recommending or asking Google to sell off Chrome to end the monopoly. So first off, the quick TLDR, the U.S. Department of Justice is urging Google to divest its Chrome browser to dismantle its illegal monopoly of online search, a move that could significantly reshape the tech giant's business and structure of the internet. So the DOJ argues that Google's ownership of Chrome and Android strengthens its monopoly over the online search market. Judge Amit Mehta ruled that in August of 2024 that Google had abused its dominance in the search business and manipulated its control of internet gateways. The DOJ filings highlights Google's payments to third parties to maintain its status as the default search engine. Now, the remedies that the DOJ put forth, and obviously, like, this is what Google's now going to be taking back, but it's, again, first was like divesting its Chrome browser. Second is spinning off the Android operating system to create a more competitive search market. The filing acknowledges resistance from Google and partners regarding this proposed remedies. A decision on the final remedies will be made during the trial phase in 2025, which could have far-reaching implications for Google's business operations and digital ecosystem. The thing I struggle with here a little bit is, has Google taken a stronghold? Yes. But were they not the ones that built it as well? Like, I feel like just because they were the most opportunistic, they were the most ready, it's easy to point at them as being the villains right now. But I would argue they're the ones that put this stuff together for consumers in a way that made it manageable. So yes, YouTube, it's not really talking about YouTube, but if we think about total search intent that's happening in the market, Google and YouTube are the number one and number two. That YouTube was purchased by Google. It could have been purchased by anyone else, but Google bought it. So I feel like, are we vilifying a little bit Google here? And I know Microsoft went something similar when it was a default in Microsoft browsers, and yes, they got penalized for that. I think it's just by nature of these larger tech giants, they will just have this, quote unquote dominance. It will be interesting because I know this will have a ripple effect on the advertising part of our of the ecosystem, but it will. I don't know what to think here. I really don't, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that kind of strikes me is, like, I totally agree with you too. Like, they built the whole thing.
They built it.
Yeah. Like, look at your sweater, by the way.
Oh yeah.
My kids stole mine. I got my mug. Oh,
there it is.
We got swag, by the way, in case you're not listening. Yeah, we're a pretty big deal.
But we tell ourselves.
Yeah. So they built it. Remember, what was that? Maybe 10 years ago, maybe? Apple was like going to be the first $1 trillion company.
Oh, right. Yes.
Something like that, right?
About 10 years ago.
Yeah. So I just did a quick search. NVIDIA has a market cap of 3.6 trillion. Apple also has a market cap of 3.6 trillion. Alphabet has a market cap of 2 trillion. I mean, the number of companies that are, like, now way over what, that barrier that we've had before of $1 trillion company.
Yeah.
Like, they're doubling and tripling this.
Totally.
And, like, they're getting bigger and bigger and bigger. It's an interesting thing because, they've got market dominance. Like Apple as an example, how do they grow? Like, meaningfully. Like, they have to pick markets where there's big enough opportunity for them to grow from a $3 trillion company into a $4 trillion company. So
totally.
Now you're picking off things like healthcare as the new market opportunity. So then you get the Apple Watch, and then there's a whole bunch of data there, and then there's a whole bunch of privacy around personal, like biometric data, and that kind of stuff. Yeah, I think this is going to become a bigger and bigger issue for a lot of these organizations as they get bigger and bigger. Before, companies were never this large. And it was always one of those things like, a couple of little things here and there. But now it's kind of like each one of these individual business streams
huge.
Could be a giant $1 trillion company all to itself.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Like yeah. And so I agree with you. Like, I think, Apple built it. The part of what makes, Google built it, Alphabet. Part of what makes it all work so well is that it is one company that has all this data that syncs between all their devices and all their platforms and all that kind of stuff, just like Apple.
Yeah.
And so you break that apart, I wonder what happens to the data sharing and the user experience. Like, I get the idea of like anti-competition, but yeah, there's so much about this story that is, I think, just the beginning of where we're going to go.
Yeah. And it just, for me, is it ushering in the wrong precedent? Like, if you get too big, then we're just going to knock you down because it's a product or service that consumers want and use and need. Like, you can't fault for them capitalizing on an opportunity. They were genuinely kind of like the first monetized search engine. They were not the first search engine, though. Let's not forget that.
Not even close. Yeah.
So, like, again, I think there's a lot more to this story. It's a very complex story. Watch the space.
Yeah.
Things are going to change.
Well, there's even things like I keep seeing about Elon Musk now with his role at Doge, whatever, the Department of Government Efficiency, I think it is. And he's the CEO of like 6 or 7 companies. There's a couple of AI companies there. There's the space company, obviously. There's Twitter. Like, where does all this go? Like, governments and getting involved in corporate, and then corporates getting involved in government, and there's like a pretty big blurring of lines now between all this. Is really interesting.
It is. Anyways, enough of the news. Now we're on to our marketing moment.
Yeah.
But we decided to profile our podcast.
Yeah.
And kind of how we got here. We'll get into like our vision, our objectives, like our results to date. And hopefully it inspires another wave of inspiring, content creators and things like that at the very least. Or just a way to get to know us a little better.
Yeah. Okay, V. So take me back. Why did we start this thing to begin with?
Well, let's go really back.
Okay.
Where you and I first met.
Yeah.
Like, you and I first met while working with Canada's like largest sports retailer at the time. You led all social media marketing, and I led all digital and email marketing. So we were kind of like two peas in the same pod when it came to bringing campaigns to life, because obviously it touched our channels. And I think that forced us to work really closely together on a lot of these campaigns.
Mm-hmm.
And we were very fortunate at the time because we had our leadership really leaned in. They wanted us to push that envelope. So it wasn't just like a BAU in the way that we were operating. We were really operating out of what was normal at the time.
Mm-hmm. And
we co-ushered in this new way of thinking, was a digital first thinking and advertising for the retailer that, again, words can mean something or nothing at the same time, but we were recognized in the industry by not only by all the awards that we had won during that time, but also just like the innovative thinking. There's so many like white papers during that were written. Do you remember like the From Paper to Pixels was one of the famous ones that I think was done on everything that we had done.
Mm-hmm.
And we did that for almost 4 years together. Mm-hmm. And it was that's kind of how we met. Now, that shared passion that we had though for innovation, for marketing, fueled so many conversations. Like
mm-hmm.
you will remember, like we'd go out on bike rides, and outside of getting the pleasantries, like, hey, how's the family?
Yeah,
et cetera, is like immediately we just started talking shop.
Yeah, and then we'd hit a hill, and I'd be sucking wind trying to keep up to you, and then
Oh, the tables are turned now, though. But anyways.
Yeah. The other part I want to do say, like, one of the things for me that was like a tipping point in that, like our career, was that I'm pretty sure you and I both had spent like a week preparing for this board meeting that we were presenting to the Canadian Tire executive team. We had every piece of data under the sun. We had Google supporting us in building out these decks. We had Facebook supporting us building out these decks. We had our media agency supporting us building out these decks. We had like everything, like
we had it all
of the data. We had it all, right?
We did.
Every slice, every, permutation and combination of the data.
Totally.
Presented to the board, and after whatever it was, an hour and a half, 2 hours, they're like, okay, great. So did it work? And that to me was like, fuck.
Yeah.
And for me, that was one of the things that I always think to when was to a reason why I wanted to start this podcast, because I wanted to find out the things that work.
Totally. And I think that just leads perfectly into, if we were to summarize everything, like into what our vision was for this is, to inspire that curiosity and empower listeners with credible, actionable insights from global experts, fostering continuous growth in the fields of marketing, strategy, and innovation. We know it's the sum of all parts that actually makes strategy work. And I think, like you said, if you remember the amount of internal selling we had to do at the time to get to the point of actually making this commonly accepted was a lot. So like internal stakeholders coming on board, then, you're working with the right partners and publishers to bring this to life. There was a lot of work involved, and that's where I do credit at the time what our leadership team was able to do to really help usher in this new era of thinking for that retailer.
Mm-hmm. So, and then I think the other part I would say, I'm going to skip over, there's the name part, because I want to talk about that just at the end. As far as the result goes, I think there's the objective that we had that we put in our pitch deck anyway for our sponsors. And I think this to be is true. We wanted to serve forward-thinking marketers by building a library, like a library of the best evidence-based ideas, so that we could help reduce risk, help inform better decision-making, and ultimately drive profitability, which is where we started the joke around chasing profitability all the time.
Exactly.
So what were some of the results that we got from that, Veet?
Well, we just hit our 100th episode, and, honestly, when we think about our biggest thing, and you talked about like our objectives, creating a library. I remember at the time we were even saying, like, we don't care if anyone listens to this. Like, we were happy just having the conversations with a lot of these thought leaders, because we want to continue to grow. And it was just a way to, make sure we had the library that we could always reference for any moment in time. But again, when we're looking at the results, first of all, we have to acknowledge the guests that we've been able to bring on. You think about Roger Martin, the caliber guests we've been able to bring on. Roger Martin, we've had Nicole Hartnett from the Bergen Bass Institute, Jenny Romanek. We've had Mary Kiriakidi from Kantar as well. Like, the list is huge when we think about the people that we've been able to bring on. So I think that's something that, when we're thinking about results, is actually what's driven our collective growth and results to date. We're continuously to exceed that. Our followership, our subscription base is constantly growing, which is exactly what we want to see, especially as we're approaching year 4, actually, in January. And we've covered a lot of different like categories. If you think about like the topics that we've covered, everything from strategy, from pricing, we've gotten into creative, media buying, measurement and analytics with Avanish, if you recall, that was one of our big episodes. Getting to laws of marketing. Like, it's the library's so deep right now, and it really does cover, because we like to. It's a Sleeping Barber podcast. It's a business and marketing podcast, because we don't think those things are mutually exclusive. It's like they're all tied together, right? And we like to make sure that we're covering as much of that as possible.
Yeah, and it speaks to, I think, a lot to what makes marketing interesting for me is that it's like so many components and elements that go into it. I mean, some of the other things in terms of the categories, like we've talked to finance. about what we need to learn. We talked about ethics, about product design. There's all kinds of elements in there that make marketing so interesting. And so, there's lots of ground to cover, and I think we've done 100%. A really good job at covering a lot. I don't know that, there's a question around whether we should cover all of them.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think there's some of that stuff that, or how we position, how we package it maybe, and make it a little bit more tighter rather than so diverse. But I mean, that's part of what marketing is. So
totally. Have we seen growth?
Yeah. Like year over year, 73% year over year growth rate. We've got a global audience. I'll just share some of these numbers. So the last time I pulled the numbers, there was about 21% from the US, 18% from Canada, 13% from the UK, 6% Australia. What was interesting about those numbers, remember when we first started, weirdly, we had a whole bunch of people from the UK initially. Yeah. And so our numbers of our audience by percentage was way higher in the UK. It was like our top ranked one.
Yeah.
Sweden is number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I think part of that is that we've built people connections there and network there, and had a few people like Kai and Robert and Hannah on there from Sweden.
Yeah.
So it's interesting seeing the audience and the reflection of who we've brought on being a part of the influence of who listens. So that's been interesting. And then the other part I wanted just to talk about as well is the mental and physical availability. So maybe I'll let you talk about mental, and I'll talk about physical if you don't mind.
Yeah. So like when we think about the mental part, obviously it basically like our why is her name?
Nicole?
Forgetting her name. Not Nicole. From the Ehrberger Bass Institute, we talked about
Ward?
Ella. Yes. So we created these. If you think about like the podcast logo, the British Voice intro, we wanted to make sure that there is that nod to more of that global audience, if you will. And then when we think about like that first law of marketing is our ability to create those distinctive assets. This is where like the name kind of comes into play a little bit as well. Like this isn't a traditional marketing name. Like, we're forcing the word marketing in there as like calling it like a business and marketing podcast. But when you think of the Sleeping Barber, you don't naturally think of marketing. And that's also by design. And while there's an origin story behind that, and maybe we can take a few moments to share that, Mark, if you'd like. What do you think?
Now,
yeah, let's do it now. Let's do it now.
Yeah, real quick version is there's a computer problem. There's a barber that and the computer programmers have to figure out how to make this work. So there's a barber that is in one room. It can sleep or cut hair. The other room is a waiting room with X number of chairs. And if there's people in the chairs, then the barber should be cutting hair. If there's nobody in the chairs, then the barber can sleep. Exactly. So it's a computer science problem to solve that. For me, what I really liked about it was the analogy of, in a lot of organizations, there's silos. And connecting the silos is one of the ways to make greater value for the organization, but also for the customers. And so, that's a really short version of the story.
Well, and the reason why, though, I think we liked it for the podcast is because it's really unique. Like when you say the Sleeping Barber, it's like, what? Mm-hmm. What is it? And I think it's a very memorable name, if you will. Mm-hmm. And because of that, it's become quite a distinctive asset paired with like our color palette. Like we lean into the red, which is a softer red that we have, but then also the gray as well. So it kind of like plays off on the creative when we're doing album art and any promo material. They complement each other really, really well. Mm-hmm. And again, it's become somewhat distinctive for us, which is important as we continue to grow. How about physical availability?
Yeah, so physical availability, it's available on Spotify and Apple. Initially, we made that intentional choice. And then we used what's it called now? It's not Anchor, whatever it's called, Creators at Spotify. But that has a plugin where you just, it automatically distributes to every other platform that exists out there. So that's a big reason for us or how we get the podcast distributed and make it available wherever people are. But then also on YouTube, And you've been awesome at building a lot of the content around YouTube and video footage and doing
Thanks,
all
man.
that stuff. And so like also on YouTube, there's shorts available, post-pod, there's clips, there's all kinds of playlists. So making that available and accessible in little snippets, bite-sized pieces, so that you don't have to listen to the full episode. But the full episode is available on YouTube as well, because it's also a podcast platform. And then LinkedIn is another place where we make the information, the podcast available.
Exactly.
We've got a website. So there's lots of things that we've done that make it physically available for as many people as we possibly can.
No, exactly. And I think, again, it goes hand in hand. You can't have one without the other. And I think while we may use LinkedIn as kind of the main form of communicating episodes and learnings and things like smaller videos that we'll add from time to time, I think a big part of this is because it's widely available across any pod. Like we never talk about Amazon Music, but it's available there as well. Like it's everywhere. Anywhere you could possibly think to get your music or your podcast, just look up Sleeping Barber, and I'm sure you'll find our two beautiful faces there.
Well, at least yours.
Oh, whatever.
So yeah, that's the marketing moment. That's a case study about Sleeping Barber. So we're very excited about it.
We are. And we're really excited about year 4 coming up here in January. A lot of new things that we're going to be trying out, and I couldn't be more excited.
Yeah. Last but not least, coming up next week,
guess who's back?
Connor from That's What I Call Marketing, and
good friend Elena from Marketing Architects.
Yes, indeed. So we did a year in review last year with the two of them, and we're coming back again this year, going to do another year in review, which is really fun because we haven't really talked to either of them very much this year.
No.
So, and they've been doing some awesome stuff with their podcast, so it'll be really great to catch up.
Completely agree. Looking forward to that conversation. It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun.
Anyway, and like, maybe speaking on behalf of V and I, thank you for listening.
Yeah. Thanks for keeping us in your ears.
Episodes. Yeah. Keeping it. Oh, your poem was amazing, by the way.
Thanks, buddy.
Yeah.
Thanks, man.
I was going to try and come up with a poem on profit right at the top, off the top of my head, but it's not going to work.
It's not working.
My brain is not working. So I'll just say, this has been a lot of fun chasing profitability with you, V.
It's been a hoot. Real genuinely enjoy every moment of it. Any moment we get to interact with our guests, with those that listen, but more importantly, putting this content out. I think it's it feels in a way like paying it forward too, and in some capacity. And looking forward to what 2025 brings for the podcast as well. My goodness, they're back. Our live audience. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Okay, buddy. Well,
all right.
We'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Take care.
Yep.